Today, I'm joined by Gary McGann, the former CEO of Lingus and Smurfit Kappa, now Smurfit Westrock, and the current chair of Teneo Ireland's advisory board. How are Irish businesses equipped to deal with the digital transformation and AI effect that the world is feeling? Globally, in a comparison, are we in good shape? Are we kind of probably in the median? Where are we from an Irish perspective?
I think we're in this probably similar places we have been in the last 20, 30 years, in that we're in mid-pack and maybe a little bit more of that. But we're in some danger. And the reason we're in some danger is because we have this conundrum that everybody has, but we don't seem to be able to get our heads around a plan, not an outcome, because outcomes are slow, to address the energy needs, to build the data centers. We can't have the nice stuff and say to somebody else, will you take the bad stuff? These are ecosystems. I think secondly, we have been living off past brilliant educational structures, but the bar has been raised dramatically. We have a new man, Professor Dermot O'Brien, who is just back from Cambridge, where he was Pro-Vice Chancellor of Research, Innovation and Partnerships with Industry. Come back to head up the Research Institute of Ireland, which is great news because this man is a real forward thinker. But he would tell you about the gap that exists between. So we're turning out a lot of really good people, but we need to be better than good because we don't have a right to exist on a small island with no natural resources. We have to just be better.
How do we change that?
I think we have to first of all get the infrastructure right, because we've always been good at bringing talent in and learning from them very quickly. I mean, when I started in Ericsson, we were bringing in completely knocked down kits and screwing them together and tying them up. When I left Ericsson, we had one of the largest software centres in the Ericsson world worldwide. And that was off education and vision and so on. So we can do it all right. But I think there's a danger we're very complacent at the moment. I really fear about complacency. If you think about the Irish economy, it's dependent on significant dependence on foreign direct investment, whose strategic decisions are taken anywhere other than from Ireland, other than the 5 or 6 multinationals we have from Ireland. But even the multinationals from Ireland, their employment in Ireland relative to the total is tiny, because the market is tiny. So we're dependent on that, and we don't have the scale of indigenous companies coming behind. I'll give you a history lesson, a quick one. A man called Jim Culleton was CEO of CRH and retired. The government asked him to do a report on a strategy for Ireland industrially in 1992, called the Culleton Report, surprise, surprise. And he basically said we need to grow an indigenous sector to underpin foreign direct investment, pick the learnings from it, grow ourselves, so that when that levels off or starts to decline, we have something coming up behind it. If we lose significant foreign direct investment, and we won't overnight, it'll be a slow leakage, we're in trouble. And yet, at the moment, we can't house people, we haven't enough water, and we haven't enough energy and energy alternatives. We don't even have enough energy, never mind energy alternatives. And there's nobody responsible for that. That's not Donald Trump's tariffs or war in Gaza. That's us, it's on us. So we need to fix that. Control the controllables and fix the fixables. And they won't be fixed overnight, but people have to believe there's a plan, a credible plan, and it's showing evidence of starting to deliver.
Culture has become kind of an in vogue word in the last 20 years. I say 20 years because I probably wasn't very aware of it until the realization that good culture absolutely enhances the team, irrespective of what business or sector you're in. And you sometimes can only see what negative culture looks like after the fact. To you, what does high-performing culture look like?
I agree with you. I can remember a time where I don't think it was even in the lexicon of business people, and certainly if it was, people looked askance at them and thought they were a bit namby-pamby-ish.
A bit fluffy.
A bit fluffy. Good. And I think even today, as I look at boards, like the role of boards is kind of fairly straightforward. Appoint a good CEO, agree a strategy, define the risk appetite, which is another challenging area, set some goals and oversight on it. And then the one people critically forget, and then ensure there's an underpinning culture for successful execution. And when people try to define it, you'll regularly get, culture beat strategy every day of the week. And you say to people, so I get the strategy bit, so what do you mean by culture? And certainly as I look back on the various international companies I've been involved in or worked with, generally speaking, you boil it down to kind of what we do and how we do it. The what we do tends to be the kind of the targets or the goals. The how we do it is kind of the culture. And it's about, shared ambitions, and ambitions with a big A, not a small a. Quite often it's about an agreed kind of template without it being rigid, such that you kill all initiatives and evolution. And most importantly, probably at least ethical, if not ethical, moral guardrails. Mm-hmm. And then, the principle of a good chair is to have the things I've mentioned and then get the hell out of the CEO's way. And the fundamentals of a good culture is where you can actually let people go and win, deliver and win, acknowledging that they won't always win. So part of a culture, certainly of a positive culture, is that it's not a punishing culture. It's a challenging, demanding, but not punishing. As in, when people slip, it's get up, dust yourself down and move on again. The kind of looking for the victim environment kills any initiatives. And that's where I think the public sectors in many countries are struggling, where the public servants are in that mode. But getting a culture in Smurfit Kappa, Smurfit Kappa are in about 45 countries now. They're in 37 or 38 when I left. It is impossible to run people in 38 countries with 350, 400 factories, as many markets, if not more, and have a kind of slide rule and a template and so on. What you had is goals, objectives, targets, and mutual agreements. Like, you tell me what you think we can achieve here. And we'll have the debate about whether you're low-balling or hard-balling, but we'll end up basically in an agreed position, and then give them support. There's boundaries that are just untouchable, and let them at it, and be there when they slip and fail. So I remember my wife asking me, I thought you were the boss. You were traveling like crazy when you were not the boss, and now you're still. And I remember saying to her, the head office in Dublin is an overhead. There's no money made there. We spend money there. So I'm going where the money is made to support the teams, approve the capital expenditure, meet the customers, and literally be a cheerleader. And that's a good cultural environment, because people feel, A, that you care enough to come and visit them, whether they're in the forests of Venezuela or the barrios of Colombia or, nice Hong Kong or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're there for the people and you spend time with them. It's not in and out. But you couldn't possibly put people under pressure on your costs and your delivery. Mm-hmm. You're swanning in like Lord Fauntleroy, spending a couple of hours and swanning out again. Just can't do it. So culture is about a lived experience with boundaries. When
you have a merger of Smurfit and Kappa in that instance, how much in the due diligence of seeing the credible alignment between the two are you looking at the two cultures that exist, and then is it a challenging proposition to try and merge the two when naturally thousands of people involved? How do you do that?
I don't know many businesses that actually do a kind of a culture audit. They normally will drive business alignments, business mergers, acquisitions, off the back of the market, the strategic opportunity, the complementary, the fit, etc., and try to make the culture work afterwards. And I think that's probably still true in most cases. But it does lead into what sort of deals you want to do. And in the case of Smurfit Kappa, it's always worth remembering that most mergers or acquisitions, the day before they're concluded, the two companies are beating the hell out of one another in the marketplace. And more particularly, it's down to individuals. Because Smurfit Kappa was a merger, but it was a merger with a premium. We paid a premium. And there were two of everything. So day -1, they're killing one another. Day 0, it's shock, horror. It was a good kept secret, so it was kind of shock. And day +1 is have I got a job or don't I have a job? So very quickly trying to bring clarity to it and not have a kind of a long, painful process is critical. In Smurfit Kappa's case and in Smurfit Westrock now, I think Tony and the team have done a great job in paying a premium to get basically majority control, because the real dominant culture was Smurfit. Smurfit has an amazing culture, down predominantly to Michael Smurfit's work in the early years and rolling out a model that just enabled people. And if you've got that, then you're not starting with two different cultures and trying to build a third culture. I mean, what does that mean even?
Yeah, makes it easier to bring people along with you during those kind of moments of significant change.
And people aren't trying to second guess it. It's kind of, this is the way we do things, guys. Like, I mean, tell us the way you do it. The one other thing about great cultures is they're not arrogant. They're open to influencing to a different point of view or a different perspective, but not on the fundamentals, not on the boundaries of ethics and morality, and it's not even about legals. It's about how we behave towards people. And so when you do these mergers and you do these acquisitions, there are always people who are going to lose their role. And so it needs to be done as efficiently as possible, as quickly as possible, as humanely as possible, and as respectfully as possible.
In sport, and I don't know if it's as relevant in biz, I'd be interested to get your take on it. We always talk about you learn more from the losses, because sometimes the wins paper over the cracks because you're so delighted with yourself and you've got a trophy or you've had some success, so you actually tend not to scrutinize how you got there, you just got there. Is there a moment in the course of your career that you look back and reflect on a loss or something you learned with a setback that you kind of delved into and thought that really stood to me?
It's interesting. I don't think business has as many Monday mornings as sport has with the video. I don't think business is maybe better now, but they weren't great at kind of retrospection. It was almost
doing an autopsy.
Well, yeah, doing an autopsy. I worked with a colleague in Bailey's many years ago. He used to describe business as business is like war. He said you bury the dead, bind up the wounded, and march on. And to some extent that was true, but most companies that have had the organic business is kind of a game of continuous challenge, wins, loses, and so on. So they're not material. The big ones are you don't get a bond away, or you don't get a deal, a big acquisition done. Somebody either gazumps you or somebody tries to chip you, whatever. I think there's always learnings from that, and more often than not, the learnings are something that was much earlier in the iteration. I remember being part of Gilby's when we made the bid for Irish Distillers. I joined the day we made the bid, which was auspicious. It was a very contested bid. Richard Burrows was CEO of Irish Distillers, and he defended the bid very successfully. He was outstanding and ended up being CEO of Pernod Ricard, chairman of British American Tobacco, and so on. The error was made in lowballing the bid to start with. I mean, it was way back about a year previous to the day it finished. It's the only failed acquisition in history where the shareholders were denied the highest price. So we offered 260 to start. We ended up offering 520 twice, and they had to take 460 from Pernod Ricard because of a handshake, which was deemed by the High Court to be and the European Court as a contract. The point I'm making was quite often business is not good at actually unveiling where did this start to go wrong? Where did we get it wrong? Because the last few plays are in the heat of battle. It's a bit like, a team attacking, but the team attacking and it breaks down and there's a score at the other end. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff you'd like at Monday morning. We wouldn't do that morning because it's too painful.
So through those disappointments, is that how resilience is built? Is resilience purely an experiential piece, or is there some magic bullet of being able to teach it to the next generation?
I think it's a fundamentally important point, but I think it's the same word, but I think it means an awful lot of different things. depending on circumstances. If I look at when I was growing up, resilience were Irish parents in the west of Ireland never going on holidays and saving every penny they had to put their kids through school and not living long enough to see the actual success they got. But they never, ever doubted the wisdom of what they were doing, even when they were so short there wasn't enough food at times. And I'm not saying that was solely my experience, but there were many people like that. Resilience today is being able to live with social media and things like so the bullying on social media, I only understand it by hearing about it. So there's a much, like come at the hour, come at the generation, there's a much tougher ask in human resilience, individual resilience now, in the world that we lived in today, given the intrusiveness, the lack of privacy, the propensity of kids anyway to put it all out there. I remember asking my eldest daughter, like, everybody can look at social media and like when people go for interviews, they're not worrying anymore. No, they'll back themselves. And that's fascinating to me because we would be so cosseted, private, and resilience was very personal and private in those days. Resilience is much more public now. Public resilience, failing publicly you know much better than I do. As I said, you're much more kind of judges of your performance than I've ever had. And that's a bigger ask. And even ordinary people now have it with social media. So I think people of my generation fall into the trap of thinking they've no backbone, they got it too easy, yada, yada, yada. And so I think building people up to have the self-confidence, but they still have to find their own inner self. And that's challenged.
There's no fast track to it. It's just based on each individual has to grind it out themselves?
Well, not really. I think where resilience is really built is where people are there for one another when the times are. There's a much more caring Ireland today.
There's no doubt that losing in sport is unavoidable. You look at Jack Nicklaus finishing second in 19 majors. Yeah. I think Michael Jordan, he's quoted as saying he missed the game-winning shot at least 26 times, missed thousands of other shots. So from a business point of view to sport, do you think there are any learnings from one to the other that you can take from what goes on, or are they two very separate entities? And certainly in the world that you've lived in the sectors that you've lived in, do you look to sport and think, I definitely can utilise that, maybe not at my next board meeting, but in my thinking around how I might develop a point or some other issue?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who was new to Smurfit, you would have a conversation with Michael for no more than 5 minutes before he'd remind you that his grandfather always told him, his father should I say, Tony's grandfather, that nobody ever remembers who was second in the Grand National. And that was his mantra, like, we're going to win, we're not going to be second. That doesn't mean we're not going to be second or third at times, but if the ambition, it's down to ambition. I think the real learning in business from sport is to be able to see on screen or in real life teams playing off one another, with one another, to one another, in a multiplicity of different circumstances against a multiplicity of different competitors. And on off days as well as on days, when the ball is dropped instead of held, all this stuff. Because that's what goes on in business, but people don't see it quite like that. But what they do see is the last play is irrelevant. The next play is the relevant one. So my mantra has always been, I don't care about yesterday. Tell me about tomorrow. Yesterday, the only thing I care about yesterday is there something, is it still leaking and do we need to plug it? But if not, let's just move on.
How important is reputation in business, and is it really important to protect it and enhance it at all costs?
So I think reputation is an accumulation of experiences and outcomes. And the danger with it, I think, is if you stress over it, you become almost defensive. It's like in soccer, the old teams in Ireland years ago. If we scored a goal in the first 20 minutes, we went into defensive mode and normally lost 3-1.
Park the bus.
Park the bus, and unfortunately the bus had holes in it. So, but reputation, good reputation and bad reputations, you can't escape them. Because nobody does big business with anybody without checking them out. Nobody hires a person without checking them out. Nobody appoints a new advisor without checking them out. Nobody kind of wants to be first. I had a CFO years ago, and he always had a great phrase. He said, "We don't want to lead the Tour de France. We want to be leading the peloton. Because if the guy goes around the corner and hits a truck, we're going to avoid the truck." So it's kind of been there for the kill, but not. And it's about staying in the game and staying with the opportunity. But the problem with reputation is when people really punt it and take a chance, they don't realize the accumulated value that they are putting at risk. So I said earlier about people taking calculated risks. I said calculated. I mean, reputation is, the old adage, it takes decades to grow a reputation and it takes one day to kill it. Not necessarily quite true, but quite often it's true. Quite often it's true. And without reputation, you have no calling cards. It's very, to get into new business opportunities. And like Teneo know this. I mean, this is stock and trade for Teneo. I often wonder whether people in organizations should spend a bit more time just talking about it and thinking about it, and even analyzing, what does it look like? What do we think in our organization does reputation represent? Is it, because every business has slightly different angles to it. And I really think it's something that probably deserves more attention in the good times. Mm-hmm. Most things in business, they say you should do the tough stuff in the good times. And every business does the tough stuff in the bad times. Mm-hmm. Because they kind of, but not, the old St. Augustine, convert me, Lord, but not today.
In your leadership roles, you would have had to do an awful lot of media over the years. Was it an aspect that you enjoyed? Did you prepare a huge amount for it? Did you talk honestly? It's challenging when you're speaking on behalf of a number of people, and certainly it's one thing speaking on behalf of 25, 30 people, but you're talking to thousands of people, shareholders. How did you deal with speaking to the media?
It's not something I particularly enjoyed. I accepted it as part of the role. I think there are two types of people. There are people who love it, and generally they're good at it. It's the old adage, if you're good at something, you love it, and if you love it, you might be good at it. And then there are people who are required to do it because it's part of the role. I'm in the latter. I'm not particularly good at it, but I recognized it needs to be done, and there are things. So I did what I had to do. I never volunteered to do more than I had to do on the media front. For business in the media, you need to have a reason. And the reason isn't because you're good at it or because you're a star performer. Like, you need to have an audience, and that audience needs to be the media activity needs to be the only way to talk to that audience. Because otherwise there's multiple other ways that are more private or more accustomed to business people's capabilities. I really worked very hard. Even if I was a natural, I probably would have worked very hard. I mean, Tony O'Reilly, he was often asked how he was such a good public speaker, and he said, just practice, practice, practice. And everybody knew him. You'd know of this, that he did. He practiced in front of a mirror. He practiced not just the words, but the mannerisms, the whole 9 yards. And of course, all of a sudden, he's the most natural speaker in the world. So it's like a lot of things in life, I think, practice, practice, practice. But
a 20-year success overnight.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I'm waiting for that 20-year success. But I do believe, we talked about reputation earlier. I mean, here's a place where you could screw your reputation big time. I mean, if you get a CEO on the plinth, basically choosing his words badly or going down a rat hole because some very good interviewer has spotted a glitch, and that's their role in life. I mean, people get now annoyed about interviewers and about media. That's their role. You've got to remember their role. So I think media training, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a star performer or Tony O'Reilly, but media training as in what points, who are the audience, what are you trying to say to them? What's a good outcome? If you woke up in the morning and they said, here's the headline. I have a very good friend, a journalist, now retired, who resigned from his position as deputy editor because his editor changed a heading on an interview I gave him, and the deal was that he'd play it straight, and he played it totally straight, but the sub-editor had put in the heading it was about Aer Lingus, and we were struggling like crazy. And he resigned. I'll never forget him. He resigned over that, and he was very successful afterwards. So so lack of training for media, or people thinking they're good at media, or worse still, people think I know everything about my business, and so therefore I'll have no problem. You may know everything about it. It's actually getting it out into intelligible messaging, depending on what you're trying to do. And if you actually know what you're trying to do, don't do it. And if you do know what you're trying to do, get somebody who's skilled to tell you, is that what they just heard? And the first time you do it, you realize, geez. I mean, I remember the first one I ever did, and I had a very good team with me. And I asked them, I said to them, we'll do this blind. I want you all to write down what you believe the key points of what I said were. I had 4 people. I had 13 points. I only wanted to make 3 points. Only one of them got the 3 right, but he had 6 in total. So it's for people who don't do it naturally. Why would they assume they can get up and just do it? So I think people training and people who have to do it on a regular basis, investor relations, media communications on results, doing it without proper professional support and advice is crazy.
Yeah.
A bit like going out and saying, I'm going to be a golfer. I buy a bag of golf clubs and go out and I play serious good golf. Yeah. Try that too, it didn't work.
So interesting and good advice. I want to close off by just asking you 6 snappy, quick fire questions. Don't need a huge amount of thought. Hopefully they'll be easy enough to not require. What media do you consume?
I'm a butterfly. I watch terrestrial television. I watch every news channel last thing at night, which is the most important thing not to do at night. And I'm going to stop doing it because they're all covering the same things. I skim read always every morning the Financial Times, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. And then from time to time, if somebody advises me on a good podcast.
What's something you're looking forward to in the next year?
Being alive, Ryan. I'm at the stage where I'm in Sniper's Alley, remember?
If you could switch roles with anyone for a day, who would it be?
I'd actually switch with you anytime. I would love to be as immersed in rugby as you are. I think it's a privileged position.
I'll take that.
Well earned.
What's the one habit you think is essential for success?
Perseverance. Constantly striving to do the things you know you didn't do well.
I'm always interested in knowing what people are reading and what I should watch out for. What's capturing your thoughts at the moment, or what you recommend?
I tend to read light stuff when I'm on holiday, mainly because I read a lot of business stuff. But I've read most things written about Winston Churchill, particularly the readable stuff, simply because I think his wartime, particularly the wartime, not a nice man, but incredible leader. Lionel Barber, who's the editor of the Financial Times for many years, wrote a book about all his interviews. I cannot think of the name of it, but it was an exceptional piece. He literally wrote it the year after he retired about all the interviews he had done, and his insights into their personality was just amazing. It's a pity it wasn't available earlier, particularly while he was still editor, because I think it would have groomed some of the stuff he might have done differently.
What is one thing that you're passionate outside of work about?
My grandkids. I missed growing up with my kids because I was away. So I have a 4-year-old granddaughter who's no dad. So that's my golf. And I get more exercise, I have more good shots, and I go to bed much happier.
Yeah, that's a better investment of 5 hours than any time I've been out in the course. Gary, that was intriguing and inspiring, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks a million.